My guest at this time is a WWE veteran who you may know as Tucker, but he's on the free market now. It is Levi Cooper. Levi, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me here today.
Nick, thanks for having me, man.
We have, by the way, a listener of this show that's like a super fan of yours named Six Rings. He tweets about you all the time. So I just, first of all, before we start talking, need to shout that out because you have a true supporter out there in Six Rings.
So. Six Rings, my brother. Appreciate the love, my dog.
I think you just paid off months of tweets right there with that comment. So anyway, it's been a couple. It's been a while here since your release. How are you feeling right now, physically, mentally? What's going on with you?
Doing really good, man. Yeah, doing very good. I've just been spending a bunch of time with my family, enjoying that. My daughter just turned 3 about a month ago.
Oh, congrats!
And my wife's pregnant. She's due in early October with our second. So. Been amazing to catch up on some lost time at home. And yeah, man, been doing a lot of yoga, a lot of meditating. Been hitting the jiu-jitsu mat a little bit and, kind of just trying to get back to my roots a little bit and, get my mind and my body feeling really good again. And, trying to head into as positive of a space as I can kind of be. And it's been really good, man. I've been feeling very happy about the direction that I've been headed mentally and physically.
So you bring up going back to your roots there, hitting the jiu-jitsu mat and everything. So what was, like, kind of going back to the beginning here, we'll go a little out of order, I guess, from where I anticipated. So what was your pro wrestling experience before getting to WWE? Did you have much experience in the business? Like what was the story there?
Yeah. None. I came straight from college. So, so, I mean, I was a Division I All-American at Arizona State. My first 2 years in college, I was at Portland State. Then I was at Cal State Bakersfield. Both of those schools cut their wrestling programs. Bakersfield ended up bringing theirs back. But my third year, I walked on at Arizona State. So, 3 schools in 3 years, really of no fault of my own. But that was a pretty difficult time, when I went to Arizona, drove there by myself with my stuff in my car, didn't know anyone, had met the person I was staying with 3 times maybe. And, I knew what I wanted to do. And so I went and did it and graduated in 2013. And right after I graduated, I went to Tampa and had my tryout with WWE and got hired about a month later and started maybe 4 months after that. So yeah, nothing really. The first time I ever stepped in a ring was at my WWE tryout.
That's cool. That's a very different path than other wrestlers, obviously. So were you scouted and recruited? Was there somebody coming out to your match?
Yeah, Gerald Briscoe.
I felt it was probably Gerald Briscoe. So did you grow up a wrestling fan? Like, what was your impression when Gerald Briscoe comes up to you and is like, "Hey, kid, I think that you'd be great for the pro wrestling business," something like that?
Well, I'm a person who does their homework essentially. So, first time he introduced himself to me, I looked him up, read about him. Didn't know about him before that because, my, I guess, wrestling knowledge was all Attitude Eras. I was born in 1990. So, I'm watching Monday Night Wars essentially, right? That's kind of the wrestling that's the time of like the most of my fandom, I would say, in pro wrestling. So, okay. But then obviously you see how successful he was at kind of transitioning and kind of other guys that, I had a bit of a relationship with Clayton Cal Jack on the indies. He wrestled for Oregon State and we wrestled each other a few times. And then he was already with WWE. He got, he was a year older than me. So I had spoken to him a little bit too, just to kind of see what was up and, kind of what his experience had been, those kinds of things. And so, I mean, obviously I was excited, right? I mean, I'm 22, 23-year-old kid, like, WWE's telling me, hey, like, we want you to try out. We want you to maybe come and we want to maybe pay you to learn how to wrestle for us, So, wow. I before I talked to him, I thought I was going to just be an accountant, I have an accounting degree. And I was like, truthfully, I was prepared to just, try my hand at the business world, essentially, out of college.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you obviously went a colorfully different direction instead of being an accountant then. So, like, you get down there and, like, you've got to be around some guys that have been around the independents for a while, but it's your first time in a wrestling ring. How much of it was it way different than you were expecting when you went down and did the tryouts, or was it what you were expecting kind of going into it?
Some of both, I would say. Obviously the tryout was in Tampa. It was like one of the last tryouts that they had at the old FCW building in Tampa. So they were in the process of getting ready to move. And because I tried out in June and they started at the Performance Center, I think in July. So like they were just getting ready to move. Man. So, the training facility wasn't too impressive. Obviously there in Tampa, it was just a few rings in a warehouse or whatever. It had kind of a grungy feel, which I actually liked because it kind of reminded me of, old wrestling rings that I grew up in, had similar smell, and just kind of like, that was my first impression of it, I would say anyways. And then, getting to Orlando and kind of starting there, it was a level of culture shock, I would say. I was just learning a lot about the business, I remember distinctly the jargon of pro wrestling, the terms and things being something I hadn't considered, but being like, whoa, this is kind of like an immediate big hurdle to have to get over, like I need to. So I started just asking guys like, hey, can you, tell me about these different terms, like I remember we were in a skull section, we were just watching, film basically early on, like in my first week.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the heat, the heat. I'm like, all right, dude, they've been talking about this for like 10 minutes now. I don't know what the heat means. Like, I'm just going to ask, like raise my hand. Yeah, this is probably a stupid question, I know, but like, can you guys please explain to me what you mean when you say heat? Because I don't know what you're talking about, and it was in the context of that portion of the match, obviously where the heel takes over and whatever. And so that was, that was kind of where I started, I guess you could say, when I came in.
What was the reaction to that question? Was there laughter in the room? Was it like, do you recall what happened after you asked that question?
Yeah, there was some laughter. There was some, like I said, I prefaced it by saying, hey, I know that this is probably an obvious question or stupid, but I don't know the answer to it. So I'm going to ask it because that's just how I am. And so, yeah, there was definitely some smiles, some chuckles, but there was also, some good answers. And I think I got probably, a 1 to 2 minute answer kind of explaining, well, it could mean different things in different contexts, right? If you have heat with the office or heat with the boys, that's the same word, but kind of different than when we're talking about shine, heat, comeback in regards to a match. So, it was, I felt like at least people were respectful of my question. They answered my question, and that was my experience in NXT was pretty much great, in terms of that, like all the coaching and my colleagues. And it was a pretty fantastic experience. Honestly, there was a lot of positive energy in that building.
Yeah. I would imagine being a part of that first class to go into the Performance Center, you got to know that's something special walking into it. I would imagine there's some immediate camaraderie amongst that group of people when you walk in there, right?
Well, I didn't start then. I started in January, so I came in 6 months after the Performance Center started. So I wasn't actually part of the initial class, but yeah,
basically, okay.
It was definitely like what you're describing. Essentially, there was a pretty special energy about the place of like, hey, this has never been done in wrestling before. They got big gym, 7 wrestling rings, padded ring, like room you can cut promos in, computers you can watch them on, like all the, these different things that are available to you to, try to get better at your craft, essentially. And I remember being very excited, right? Here I am, like I said, they actually called me to hire me on my 23rd birthday. I of course couldn't forget that, right? And they didn't know it was my birthday, but it just happened to be my birthday. And pretty wild, and so of course I was pumped. Me and my now wife, we moved across the country together. I never even been to Florida. She never been to Florida. Like, we searched for apartments online. We both had cars, so we got walkie-talkies and we carpool drove across the country from Oregon to Orlando and, started our adventure together. And she's been very successful as a teacher. And, I like to think I've had some pretty good success in wrestling. And so, it's been good. It's been awesome.
Yeah, Tucker, I would say you've had some success in wrestling, and we'll get to some of the highlights here in just a second. But like, as you're breaking in, like, did you have a relationship with Hunter early on? Like, what was it like working with him as you were kind of getting into that system?
No, not too much, here and there, obviously, but I remember like early on, probably when I started, the network wasn't even a thing, right? So network became a thing like 3 months after I started. So it was totally different time, right? There's like only one, they're just doing shows in Florida, right? NXT, and it was smaller. So he wasn't around, I guess, is kind of the point I'm making, as much as he is now. And even the people that were kind of writing the show, they were also working on the main roster. So they would only come down to see promos maybe once a month, and that was kind of everyone's opportunity to like pitch an idea for television, right? And so I remember that being kind of like, oh, the people are coming, the writers are coming down and stuff, when I was kind of early on in time.
Wow.
And I mean, I guess when I first got there, in my first year or so, I'm just learning, how to be safe in the ring and how to take bumps, and the basics of storytelling, kind of the fundamentals of wrestling, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm not interacting too much with those people, because at the time I'm not even wrestling matches. I'm strictly training. I'm traveling, helping set up the ring, working security, doing that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, and as we progressed, and I would have a better, a little bit better relationship with him, and we would have some discussions. And obviously, once Heavy Machinery got going, then, we started to talk more and more. Initially, I would say, well, I had Bill DeMott for, maybe almost a year and a half before Coach Bloom started at the Performance Center. So
how was it working with DeMott?
Well, I never had any issues with him, personally. He was always not, good to me. And, he had a certain energy about him that wasn't always the most positive energy, I would say. And, I could see that, like, if he didn't like certain guys, then he would not only not help them, but maybe try to hurt them. And I don't know, like,
not physically, but hurt their careers, right?
Potentially, I don't know. Like I said, I would see some certain things that, like, but I never had any personally bad interactions with him.
Sure.
That was what I would hear sometimes people say, that they felt like he was maybe not trying to help them too much, or like he wasn't, whatever. It wasn't like they weren't having positive interactions with him. So there were certainly some issues with other people. But like I said, for me, he was always good to me, and I never had any real problems with him, and I think he liked me, actually.
Okay. So how do you get pitched Heavy Machinery? Is it you and Otis coming to them with this idea, or did they come to you and Otis and say, we got this?
Initially, it was Matt Bloom's idea.
Okay.
Yeah. And he kind of approached me, and we, had a little bit of a discussion about it. Hey, what do you think about the two of you guys getting together? And I think Otis had been there for maybe 3 months at the time or so. And, he was doing well. He was working opening matches and, starting to get over, doing his Otis stuff. And of course, I mean, he's awesome. So, and then we wrestled one match as heels. I remember it, the first match ever against TM61 in Ocala, Florida. It was outdoor venue. I think it was like 95 on an August day in Florida.
Okay.
It was very hot. I remember having a hug at the beginning of the match, and it being like a very sweaty hug, and like, oh, we haven't even started working. We still got 15 minutes, 20 minutes here. Like,
oh yeah.
And that was our only match as heels. And
was it because the crowd was like way too into you guys? They were like, we want to cheer these guys, just obvious from the get-go, or was there just a change?
No, I mean, it wasn't like that much like that. It just kind of was like, well, this didn't work that good this time. Like, let's try you guys out as baby faces. And then, the first time we had a couple matches as baby faces, and put us in the opener or whatever, and it worked out pretty good. Like, we would get the audience into the match, and interact with them or whatever. And so it just kind of stuck that we, were baby faces. Okay. And I mean, especially with Otis's energy, it's like, I mean, it's pretty hard not to like that guy, especially when he's coming out and making noises and slapping himself and, whatever. And I think foundationally we both understood each other because we had similar upbringings. You know, I'm from a small town, Hubbard, Oregon. He's from a small blue collar town, Superior, Wisconsin. So we have that in common. We were both pretty high level amateur wrestling heavyweights. That's kind of its own thing. And so understanding that gave us a foundation. I think that, what's understood doesn't need to be talked about necessarily, but we just both kind of, okay, well, we know and we respect these things about each other a lot. And we're not going to try to measure up against each other. We're just going to get together and try to move this thing forward in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, the energies for you two really play off each other really, really well. And that's the thing, we'll get to here later, but one without the other doesn't quite feel the same, I think, to a lot of fans, the way you guys really played off of one another.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very genuine love there.
Yeah. And it's got to be hard to keep a straight face around that guy going out there just kind of doing his thing a lot of the time. I'm sure he caught you off guard a time or two.
Oh yes. Especially during promos, we would usually I'd be like, all right, this is what I'm gonna say, and then you just when you feel it, just say something, and I'll react to you.
Yeah. When did he start doing the tucky thing? Was that NXT or did that come later?
Yeah, that definitely started in NXT.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll have little extra, what would say, I don't know what the proper English term for it is, but little additions, there was a time where he was adding edge to everything, so you'd be oh, I'm going to drink some water edge, and we're going to have some food edge, and we're going to go do this edge and that edge, and then there's some where he's adding the IE or the Y to the end of it. So we're going to have, we're going to go get some food, we're going to get some cafe, and it's just kind of then it just stuck, and people started calling me it, and it was all right, well, this is a thing. People, you always know, especially if you do something and then people around the performance center are saying it, then you're okay, well, we have something here. If everybody who's around wrestling 24/7 all the time is sort of getting into whatever you're doing a little bit, or they're catching on to it, or it's clicking with them to some extent, then oh, okay, that's something that you should continue to try with the audience because it's probably has a potential to have legs.
Because I had heard that the stuff with him and Mandy had started down in NXT, and which is kind of a thing that everybody down there thought was hilarious. And
he just did it on social media, dude. He's the man. He was just a joke to mess with Mandy's boyfriend at the time, Tino Sabatelli. Not just to mess with him, but it's hey, do you think if I do this thing on social media where I just ask Mandy to be my girlfriend all the time, that'll be super cringy, or it'll be? And I'm no, dude, that'll be pretty funny, I think. And he just started doing it, and talked to her what do you and she was oh, I like it, people are into it, keep doing it, it's funny. And so anytime she'd post a pic, he just take that picture and be oh, Doze's future girlfriend, and post it, right, or whatever, and just started getting over, and it became a WrestleMania match.
You are such a consummate good best friend. You're dude, go for it. You know what? Chase your dreams, whatever, man. Push it.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. Take your shot, baby.
That's so
Step up to the plate.
Well, and you talk about how you guys are heavyweights, right? Wrestlers. There was another heavyweight tag team down there you guys got to pair up with sometimes. That was Authors of Pain. Very, very unusual to see four guys of that size in tag team action. I just want to know, what was it like for you two to get to work with the Authors of Pain?
It was a lot of meat slapping, of course, right? A lot of big men.
Yeah.
It's smashing into each other. Yeah, it was good. Like you said, it kind of has its own built-in story there, right? You got four pretty big, pretty legit guys in the ring together. So, that story kind of tells itself, right? It lends itself to a certain type of match. And yeah, I think I wish we could have wrestled on TakeOver. I desperately wish that we could have wrestled on TakeOver.